Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ModzvilleUSA here, back with another video. Welcome back to the legendary Modchips series. We're here with one for the original Xbox, and this is my favorite, and many others' favorite original Xbox mod chip right here. This is the X3 from Team Xecuter. Now some of you youngsters might only know Team Xecuter from the Switch, the controversial Switch mod chips that they made. Their controversial operating system, custom firmware, SXOS. I believe that it was completely different people running it. They were also behind Gateway. But from what I've heard, they sold the original Team Xecuter sold the name at some point back in the original Xbox days. They were really something to. They were a formidable foe. They made rad stuff, and one of the raddest being the Xecuter 3 line, as well as all the various little doodads and attachments. Now, if you saw my blue ultimate Xbox build that I put together that has an X3 in it with the X3 CP control panel, the rad LCD screen, as well as the push buttons for BIOS bank switching. There's also this guy here. This is the Halo Green X3 Pro switch. This fits right in the front underneath, mounts to the bottom, and toggle the various BIOS banks. And then traditionally it comes with the regular bank switcher like this. This right here, the little DIY X3 CP I put together a while ago. It has the cables wired up already. You can get these from Chimeric Systems. He's still making these cables, and you can use any old LCD. You just gotta find someone with a very steady hand to cut your front panel for you, or hit up Mad Modders, who did these for me. He's got a CNC machine and just cuts these perfectly like a machine would. I'm gonna have his Discord name down below. You want to hit him up, get some of these front panels whipped up, and he cuts these PCBs as well. Sells these pre-cut. These ones do not fit in stock, but you can cut them. I just hot glued this in here, wired it up, and this will just plug right into the X3. There were 2 revisions. The original was this purple PCB, and this is the X3 CE. And from what I've gathered, these are fairly less common. There was a shorter run. There's more of these. I just got my hands on this one. Got both in the set. I already have one of these installed in a personal console, so we'll be installing this today. Someone giving this a new home. I'm going to be holding on to this, so I still have one of each. Now, they have all the same features here. You can see this one's just kind of a better design. So all of the plugs are right angle. So you plug them in, and they're sticking out. Not all of them. Like this is a right angle on here, but this one you plug would be facing down onto the motherboard there. Plug facing down onto the motherboard. And this is for the 1.6s, need an extra 5 volts. This one is a curved pin header, whereas on here it's a nice proper plug. Same chips, same features. It's just the CE is a better design. This is perfectly functional. They just improved upon it relatively quickly. This potentiometer here, this is for your front panel to get a nice you can adjust the contrast of it with this wheel. Very cool stuff. And then the bank switch. We've got a bunch of BIOSes that you can load up on this. Multiple. You can do an absolute ton. We'll flash on screen all of the combinations that you can have. You can have an absolute absurd amount that no one would ever need. The one thing that's exclusive to this, like you can have LCDs set up on different mod chips, the Open Xenium, it's possible. You can also, I think Stellar's adding support for that when that comes out. XBlast Lite, etc. Those all have the option to have an LCD front panel. There's even the project to modify the CPLD of an Aladdin mod chip to just be a front light or front panel LCD driver, but that requires you to have your BIOS on a TSOP flash, so it's a little limited there, but it's plenty of options. One real cool thing exclusive to this is the X3 BIOS. Very feature rich BIOS. We'll play around with it once it's installed. We're going to be doing SIR BIOS because modern BIOSes have really put X3 to the kind of left X3 in the dust these days, since nobody's ported Titan patch to it. You can't have over 2 terabytes on the X3 BIOS, unfortunately. It would be cool, if anyone's looking for a project, porting over Titan patch to X3 would be pretty neat. We've got this attachment here. This is the recovery BIOS. So say you screwed over all your other BIOSes, you need a way to boot into something, and this will boot into, I believe it's Flash BIOS is what it's called. Is basically a shittier XBlast. So what we're going to do, we're going to flash X3 to the first 4 banks there, and we're also going to flash XBlast to one of the banks, to one of the 256 banks, just because it works way better than Flash BIOS. But we're gonna have to use Flash BIOS to flash XBlast, then use XBlast to flash everything else, and ultimately the main thing this build is going to be running is SIR BIOS. But I'll show you around the X3 BIOS because it's very neat and would be cool if someone ported Titan patch to it. I've got some other little doodads for it right here. This is mostly like a full kit with a sticker or to mount it. Got another cable for installing it. This little guy is pretty weird. This is the solderless. Looks like it's for a 1.6 solderless 1.6 setup. So this just kind of presses down onto the pin headers here, and you screw it in, and this janky little thing just kind of jams into the D0 via, and it works. I mean, kind of. It's very much, baby's first mod, and you put it in. I don't recommend it. Don't ever use this, but it existed, and it's kind of neat to see the little push. Got a little push to it. It pushes right in. Just kind of touches it. Yeah, you want to solder stuff, but this was definitely a cool little way for them to sell stuff to people who are afraid of soldering irons. Put it in, and it kind of worked. So neat little relic. You don't really see many solderless mods these days. I think more and more people, with YouTube being more and more, popular, everything being more accessible, people are less afraid to solder stuff these days. But it's a cool little relic of the past there. So yeah, we're going to install this guy. We're going to install that front panel and play around a little bit. So let's get to it. One more neat little doodad that I thought I'd show is the original LPC rebuilds here for the 1.6. These are the old Xecuter rebuild PCBs. Very cool, very neat, very primitive, stylish. I like them. But you've been around the channel, you know that I typically like to just wire up my 1.6s. So I've had issues with some PCBs before, so I just wire them up. Simple, easy to troubleshoot. Okay, let's install this chip. But first, a word from our sponsors. A huge thank you to today's sponsor, PCBWay. Not only do they offer PCB manufacturing, but they now offer CNC and 3D printing services as well. I've gotten PCBs for many of my products and projects manufactured by PCBWay before. The website is super easy to use and the quality and turnaround time is amazing. Very swag, very handsome. I like it. Thanks again to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the show. Alright, here we are on the main board, and I should have already posted the video about doing the RAM upgrades with hot air. That is this console. I did that yesterday, and there's already a pin header in it because we were using the XBlast Aladdin to test the RAM chips. So pin header here, this is the X3 config for the pin header. We got a missing one here, missing one up top. The install for a 1.6 is different. The pin header is missing one more pin, I believe, and you gotta wire up 5 volts. But in my personal opinion, if you have an X3, if you've got your hands on an X3, don't waste it in a 1.6. Put it in anything but that. Do the RAM upgrade, make it nice. The 1.6 is the black sheep of the Xboxes for a reason. Yeah, just, you know, go all out with a non 1.6. So yeah, pin header's installed, so we just got to install the cable. Let's do that. Alright, so here's the back side of the board. As you will see, I have this jump wire here. This is going from D0 to ground. That was for booting the XBlast Aladdin. D0 to ground. If you want a simple mod chip install, just wire D0 to ground. Only thing you lose is booting from TSOP, like your retail NAND. And in most scenarios, that doesn't really matter, especially if you're on like SIR BIOS or something like that. You can run the retail BIOS as an app, booting the retail on SIR BIOS Titan Patch. I don't think that's possible. I'm not sure if that's going to be possible because of the way the hard drive is formatted. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that's the case. So in a lot of people's, most people's case, just D0 to ground is totally fine. Okay, so let's pull up the old diagrams here. It's from archive.org, and we've just got 3 wires. One is for your network LED, so when you're online downloading something, you have the LED going. One is hard drive activity, and then one is D0. So yeah, it's the same. I mean, this covers everything but 1.6 here. So yeah, pretty simple stuff. Let's install it. goes right here. Oh, it's upside down. Okay. Chip goes in just like that. Very nice. Okay, put the board back in the shell. Alright, so I went ahead and plugged everything in, did some cable management off screen here. So this black cable here, it's a set of cables that will go in the same thing. This is coming from the bank switch on the front panel. Plugs in the side here. This guy here slaps on. This is like an intermediary between the power eject cable. Plugs into this, and then another cable on this end comes from it and plugs into the main board here. And the LCD is wired up over here. It's tucked in, coming around the controller port here. I've got it routed around these capacitors over here. Plugs in right there. So this should be enough to get it booting. So there's a few different ways to boot this up. So if you hold power button on boot, it will disable the mod chip and try to boot from I think TSOP is what that does. There is, if you do a quick press of the power button, it will boot up to whatever your BIOS bank that you've chosen. And then what we're going to do is power and reset at the same time. Then it should do like a I think like kind of, it'll light up purple on the bank switcher, and that should take us to flash BIOS, the backup NAND there. Or, I don't know if that's NAND, the backup memory has flash BIOS on it. So first thing we're going to do is get flash BIOS booting, and then I'm going to flash XBlast to one of the banks, and from there we'll use XBlast to flash the other banks. So let's do it. Well, alright, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to go over the bank switches here before we go ahead and start flashing BIOSes to this thing. So you can have a total of 8 256 BIOSes if you so desired, or 2 of the 1 megabytes, and 1 megabytes being X3. I don't believe there's any other BIOS that's that large. X3 is 1 megabyte exclusive to this mod chip. So my preferred config is we're going to flash XBlast to one of these. As I mentioned before, flash BIOS takes a really long time to actually flash a BIOS comparatively. XBlast is instant. Flash BIOS will sit on the network flashing screen for quite a while. So that's going to be the first thing we do. I'm going to flash to bank 5, right? Let's see. Yeah, to bank. No, 7 and 8. That's what I like. So to bank 7, I'm going to flash XBlast. To bank 8, I'm going to flash SIR BIOS. Let's get this bigger. Yeah, 7 will be XBlast OS. 8 will be SIR BIOS. And then 1 through 4, which is this, is going to be X3. We're just going to do vanilla X3. And that leaves these 2 open for experimentation later down the line if we want to flash a BIOS without getting rid of one that we already have set up. So yeah, that's the setup. We're going to start here. Dip switch 1 and 4 enabled. And then the reason I like this is, you know, I'd like to go with the one with the least amount of switches switched on. So yeah, we'll just, for one, toggling one on will be XBlast, and then we toggle that off for SirBIOS, and then 1 and 2 for X3. I like it like that, so we're gonna do it like that. So let's get started. Also, before I forget, here is the boot features, the 3 different ones here. So you have to press the power button very quickly to enable your mod chip, and you'll see on the bank switcher it will light up blue when the mod chip is enabled. If you press it long press, which isn't very long at all, if it's just a little too long, a little longer than very quickly, will disable the mod chip. No point in doing that, but that's how it works. And then both power and eject at the same time will boot into the backup bank, which is on the mod chip itself, and it is flashed with flash BIOS for flashing a BIOS if, say, all of your banks are blank. You need to boot into something, so you press both of these at once. Now luckily the bank I'm flashing to already has flash BIOS on it, so by default each individual bank will have flash BIOS on it if it's never been used or if that BIOS has never been flashed. So you can check that first, but if not, you gotta get into flash BIOS by hitting power and eject, and it's very finicky in my experience. I think you kind of need to like press power first, then eject very quickly. It might take a couple tries, but just keep trying, and eventually you should get into the backup bank. And here we are in flash BIOS. So I've got my bank switch set up for bank number 7, and we are going to go to enable network flashing. I've got my Ethernet cable hooked up, and there we go. So 192.168.50.62, and here we are. So I punched it in Firefox. These programs don't work well with Chrome. Firefox seems to be the way to go in my experience. So what I'm going to do is choose select BIOS and get XBlast OS. Alright, I choose my XBlast OS version 0.60. We are going to upload and flash, and walk away, come back, and it should be done. It does take quite a while. Like, it's just going to hang on the screen for about well, it really depends on the size of the BIOS, I think. So since it's 256, it'll probably be like a minute or two, and then gradually longer and longer for larger BIOSes. So we're going to get this one done, and then we'll use XBlast to flash the rest of the BIOSes. Ladies and gentlemen, would you look at that? So the BIOS was flashed, and rebooting the system, we are here in XBlast. Again, this is bank 7. So I am going to, on the bank switch it over to bank 8, and we are going to flash it with SirBIOS. Just a little quick refresher for you. So bank 7 has dips 1 and 3 enabled. So all I gotta do is disable 1, and we're in 8. So I'm gonna do that on my front panel here. Now in XBlast, we go to settings, tools, nope, flash menu, net flash. Alright, 62 again. Here we are in Firefox. And we'll go in here. Go to BIOSes. We are going to do SIRBIOS latest at the time I'm making this. Version 2.0.3.3R. And we've got SIRBIOS Hybrid version 2.03R. And I'm going to do the UDMA5 because it's sweet. I'm not going to bother naming it. I'm just going to choose upload and flash. And you can see when we toggle back, it's already flashing. Very nice. And would you look at that, it resets itself and it's a booting up. There's no hard drive plugged in, so it's not going to get very far. So I'm going to switch it back to bank 7 and we are going to boot up or we are going to flash X3 to banks 1 through 4. It's okay. I don't like the white background, but it is what it is. Back in here. But we're not going to be using this anyway. I'm going to toggle over to SIRBIOS because I'm set up with a 4 terabyte, and unfortunately that's just not an option using the old X3 BIOS yet, unless someone ports over Titan Patch. Hopefully someone does at some point, because X3 is pretty neat. I like this config from the Xbox as opposed to an INI file, but it's the only thing it really has going for it over SIRBIOS. Let's toggle over. That's a damn cool splash screen, if I do say so myself. I spent way too long tweaking that INI. Now for the LCD, once you come into XBMC, it's not going to be enabled by default. You got to come in here, hit the black button, go to settings here, and then come on down to system, LCD, and here's my settings right here. I believe that's right. It looks perfectly fine. And before you go ahead and button everything up, the potentiometer on the X3 adjusts the contrast. We don't have software controls of that. As you can see, it's blacked out. So you want to get the LCD looking nice without the top on. Dial in that pot to how you like it, and yeah, then you're good to go. If it's too far one way, it's going to be totally washed out, so dial that in. But that's how you set that up. The LCD's very, very nice, especially when running XBMC. Kind of to another shot of that nice LCD showing what's up. Now here's a fun little bit of lore. Shout out to Yoshi69095954 over on Twitter for letting me know. He said he had at one point had a blue one as he was testing with the development, which I had never heard tale of. So I was very wrong in my my thoughts that the purple and the white were the only two. No, there were quite a few revisions before this. Here's the X3 prototype here on a green PCB. Looks very, very different. Not completely different connections going on. That's pretty wild. Final beta, USB programmable port. What was the pin header? Okay, so yeah, that's totally different. 2 megabyte flash. wild shit. Let's see. Whoa, yeah, it's got like the IDE type connection going on here. Very wild. And by the blue one, it's starting to look more like the final build, except for that massive connector, IDE looking connection. But this one looks pretty much like the final builds. Damn. Look at that. These are fucking cool. Boom, the original blue one here. Look at these. Oh! And then this cool gold one. That's gnarly. And then we got the purple. Here's the regular X3 hooked up to the LCD right here. That is sweet. Here it is with the port cover like we had on ours. And then boom, the X3 CE. Another fun fact from Will's console modifications. I had no idea this was a thing, but I'll just quote Will directly here. The Actel chips aren't Actel chips, but they're Exceed links, and they remarked them to slow down the cloners. That is really funny. Crafty shit, Team Xecuter. Very cool. Very swag. I do like that. Alright guys, Editingville here from the future, realizing that I didn't really show you around the X3 live config BIOS menu here. So let's check it out. We got customize our X3 here. Auto start X3 so we can boot straight into this menu. IGR, we got a debug mode, whole lot of features here. Customize the logo colors. So this is very nice, so you can fully tweak the startup flubber animation, etc. And then there's a bunch of presets, kind of like the pink one starting there and then tweaking that. It's kind of my favorite. Oh, that one's just the logo, and then the flubber is completely different. So you can get a nice little combo there, or pull up a hex editor if you don't want to use the presets or you want to tweak one of them. There's a bunch of skins. You can still find those online if you look up the X3 skins. I like the default one though, but that will change the style of this menu here. It's a skin for this menu. And we got the BIOS tools, so we can do some flashing from here. This tools, so this one, I was stuck with my initial one because I had a 2 terabyte. And I couldn't get it to boot up, like past this menu at all. And what did I have to do? It was something in here. Yeah, do the F and G, or just F. My current drive only has F. And I forget. I think this needs to stay enabled. Might need to be disabled, but yeah, no, I think by default it's on the standard partitions, so stock Xbox drive. You have to tweak that. Otherwise you're gonna have a bad time. But yeah, that one took me a while to figure out. EEPROM tools, you can customize what your LCD says when booting up. If you use any other BIOS, the LCD is not going to kick on until later on. Set the fan speeds here on the BIOS level. Video regions. Only enabled Japan. Let's do United States. Video modes. You get the idea. Very neat. Not a single other BIOS that I'm aware of has this has anything similar to this live config. You either need to use a tool on your PC to tweak the properties of the BIOS, or an INI file. X3 really stepped it up by having this be all baked into the BIOS itself, which I really like. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the X3. I'm sure there's way more stuff we can cover with different add-ons, the extender, all sorts of wild stuff came out for this mod chip. But I really love it for the front panel, the LCD, the original X3 BIOS being exclusive to this thing and being a very cool, very neat BIOS. Being able to tweak it on the fly from the Xbox itself is massive, and just a very rad chip here. One of probably the best mod chips, feature-rich mod chips ever made. Really cool stuff. If there's any mod chips you want me to get my hands on, do an install, shoot the shit about it, check out the features, let me know. I would like to get a Smart XX at some point. Those seem pretty sweet. It's like an Uber X Blast kind of setup there. I like those. I've got a legit Xenium here. I've got the X-Bit. If you want to see a video on the X-Bit, that is the DMS team made a X3, like a poor man's X3 that I got my hands on recently. That's pretty neat. Not as cool as this, obviously, but it is neat nonetheless. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you liked it, and if you didn't like it, well then fuck off. I'll see you on the next one.